Oh boy. What if Marvel's What If episode 6 was a real interesting deep cut? This episode, the story here is what if Killmonger from Black Panther, what if he saved Tony Stark from the 10 rings in Iron Man 1? So the timeline of this is very early on in the MCU, the first MCU movie, and boy, you want to talk about changes. I mean, every episode of What If has changes from the main timeline. Like, that's obvious. They really, I feel like, had a lot of fun writing this episode because it really went in a whole different direction. I mean, you gotta remember, going back to Iron Man 1, that's the first MCU film. Without Iron Man 1, the events of the entire MCU will most likely change. Obviously, anything with, the Avengers themselves don't happen the same way at all. It can't happen the same way. The battle with Thanos can't happen the same way either. And really, Tony was a big part of bringing the Avengers together, anyways. So things change here. Now I'm going to talk about this here, assuming that you have seen the episode. Okay? If you haven't, I mean, you guys mostly come here because you've already seen the episode, right? If you haven't, go check it out. Come back. We're going to go into some spoilers. So, I really liked how they kind of gave you a bait and switch, how you thought that Killmonger was actually going to be a good guy. Like, for a while, they had me thinking, okay, maybe Tony can, like, adopt him as, like, a surrogate son or brother in this case. They have that orphan dad thing, that orphan dad bond, and maybe they can do a lot of good, and maybe improve on the timeline, but that's not the case at all. Killmonger has his own agenda, and as we know, Killmonger didn't really change until maybe the end of Black Panther. He was a very dedicated man with a very direct and some would say stubborn agenda. He wants to do what he wants to do, and he doesn't care about betraying anybody or have loyalty to almost anybody but himself. And we see that here. I really loved sort of the Michael B. Jordan references here. Like, for example, in this episode, Killmonger's a fan of anime, and we know that Michael B. Jordan's a fan of anime. So having the Gundam, I guess, Easter egg was really cool. In addition to that, we also know that, obviously the other big franchise that Michael B. Jordan is in would be the Rocky movies, Creed. And there's moments here where he's fighting the giant robot in Tony's office and he's boxing. So they did little things like that, sort of like these meta Easter eggs that I thought were really clever. When it comes to what happened with Black Panther and Claw, that actually was pretty cool because we didn't really see too much of Claw in the Black Panther movie. He was there for the first half. Killmonger took him out. But in the comics, Claw was one of Black Panther's big enemies. So we kind of see a confrontation that seems to imply that Black Panther and Claw had history. But here we actually see them get confronted, and I was surprised again to see what happened with Black Panther and Killmonger. This dude is totally ruthless. He takes out everybody. I mean, he kills Rhodey. He kills Killmonger. I'm sorry, Killmonger kills Tony Stark, and he kills Black Panther, T'Challa, all within a couple days, right? I think they said. I forget. It wasn't a very long amount of time. And I really liked again Chadwick Boseman comes back to play T'Challa one more time. I don't know if Black Panther's in any of the other What If episodes. I mean, like I told y'all before, we did hear that before Chadwick Boseman passed away, he did record his lines for this show. This show was done sometime in 2019, I think, or early 2020. So he did record all of his lines for T'Challa before this. And I'm assuming it was prelay, which means, for those who don't know, prelay means that you record your lines and then they do the animation after, as opposed to post, which is basically like when you're dubbing an anime, for example, or a cartoon or a movie from another country, where you have to match the mouth flaps. That is harder because you have to make your mouth flaps, like as you're a voice actor, you have to watch the screen and make sure that what you say matches the mouth. But if you prelay, you just say your lines, and then the animators will draw the mouth movements around your lines. It's much easier to do it that way if you're an actor, but probably more difficult if you're an animator. You know what I mean? So that's all like internal, like nerd stuff. It's whatever. Those of you who know about anime, you know how it works. But American cartoons done by American actors usually are prelay, and that's what I think happened here, which is why, the show was really, the audio was recorded quite some time ago. This episode really was cut into two halves here. The first half is kind of the rise of Killmonger and how he was able to do really what Tony Montana did in Scarface, took out all his enemies, even the ones that were his friends, and ascend to the top. And then we have him sort of creating that army of droids, or Gundams, if you want to call them that, to really, really gain footing and gain power. And interestingly enough, in this show, even though T'Challa's dad was, he was the official, I guess you can say, Black Panther, even though it was T'Challa, we see him here, and he's not dead because we saw him die in Civil War. This is before Civil War. And it was interesting how, Killmonger went back to Wakanda. Like, that quest that he had in the movie was consistent in the Marvel What If episode. And the big battle between the Wakandans and Killmonger's robots was eerily reminiscent of the fight in Phantom Menace, the one on Naboo, the Battle of Naboo. It reminded me a lot of that with the Gungans against the droids. Same idea, right? There was a really awesome animation cut when Killmonger is riding on one of those things, and you see sort of he's charging through the droids, or whatever you want to call them, and there's explosions. And it's this blue with kind of a red background with the fire coming up. And I thought it looked beautiful, man. One of the most beautiful episodes they've put out so far when it comes to colors and things of that nature. And then when they gave Killmonger the herb to become the next Black Panther, bro, I was like, damn. This is... Imagine if it turned out like this. You know what I'm saying? This guy... He's I said it before when I first saw the movie. Killmonger was probably my favorite villain in the MCU. Him and Thanos were my top two favorite MCU villains. And this episode, the writers really nailed it because the dude did whatever it took to get to power, to get what he wanted. Manipulation tactics, lying, betrayal, stealing, killing. He did not care. I also thought it was very clever how they de-aged T'Challa's sister. That was pretty cool because if this is taking place during the time of Iron Man 1, which would have been, 2008, the Black Panther movie took place in Phase 3, many, many years later. So de-aging her, but keeping her smart and kind of, street smart as well, was the right thing to do. And I'm glad they didn't mess that detail up because I feel like it would have been something easy to skip. But the timeline, the time frame of these episodes are important. And then the Watcher at the end of the episode who said heroes never really die, they live on, as do the ones to carry the fight. I felt like that may have been an added in line for Chadwick Boseman because it really felt like that was for him. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was always there. I don't know, but that line really felt like it was added in there for him to kind of celebrate. Not celebrate, that's the wrong word. I guess celebrate his life and what he did for the MCU, but also pay respects to the man. Does that make sense? I think that's what happened here. Michael B. Jordan did play Killmonger. Angela Bassett, Andy Serkis, and Don Cheadle all reprised their roles from the Black Panther movie and the whole MCU. So that was cool to see. Unfortunately, no Robert Downey Jr., but that's to be expected. Tony Stark was played by Mick Wingert in this episode, in this show. Unfortunately, you couldn't do anything about that. It's just like how Natasha Romanoff was played by Lake Bell and not actually Scarlett Johansson. It happens. What can you do? Can't win everything. Anyways, this was a good episode, though. It was a win. Didn't enjoy it as much as the previous, not the zombies one, that one was okay, but the first episodes 2, 3, and 4 are still my favorites. This one was still pretty good, though, and I enjoyed it, and if you're a fan of Black Panther, you're going to love it. I mean, Killmonger's a great character overall, and I enjoyed that. Let me know what you think. Talk to you next time.